do a shallow clone. So shallow clone basically means we are cloning the first level, which is the properties of these objects, such as A, B, and C. But we are not going to clone the primitive value that within and other objects. So if you're going to modify the clone objects by modifying the value of D, then the modifications will be reflected to the original objects. Yeah. So if you want to, this is called a shallow clone. So let's begin. So first, we want to base case. We want to make sure that this is a object. So we say if object is equal to null, or the type of object is not object. So we can simplify the expressions. If this is the case, then we will simply return null. And then subsequently, we want to check if it is a array or objects, because an array and objects is different in these cases. And yeah, so how would you check it? Also pretty straightforward. New object is equal to, let's use a shorter expressions here. So we say if this is an array, then the new object will be in the structure of an array. Otherwise, it's an object. Yeah. And then we want to iterate all the keys of the original objects. There's a very simple way of doing this, which is using the for in. So for in object. Yeah. For in object, we're going to iterate all the properties of this object, as well as the properties of the prototype of the objects, which will be elaborated more later. So at the moment, we simply say new object key is equal to object key. Yeah. And we're going to return the new object. So I already created two examples. So this is the first example. This is the clone object built by this shallow clone. And we expected to see two equal output from the terminal. So let's try. Yeah, we got two equal values. And let's try to modify the clone object here, like saying clone object dot a is equal to 10. And then we output the two values again. And in this case, we should see a clone value to be 10, but original value unchanged. So let's try. You see, the third line here is reflecting the original objects, and the final output is reflecting the modified clone object. The modification doesn't reflect on the original objects, so this is a shadow copy. So what if we want to do a further modifications by modifying c.d equal to 20? See, as a shallow clone, the modifications should be reflected in the original object, because we are simply cloning the primitive value, but not cloning the primitive value of the object within the original objects. Wow, sounds a bit tricky, but we simply say that if the properties of the objects is a primitive values, then we're going to make a copy of it. But if the properties of the object is a object, then we are going to reference it back to the original object instead of cloning a new one, which means your modification or your modifications within this object itself is being reflected. Yeah, so let's see, is it what we expected? You see the modifications on D is affecting the original object in this case. So there's a mistake that I purposely leave in the example, which lies within the for in here. Like I say, for in will iterate all the keys of the object and the properties, prototypes of the object too. What does it mean? It means that if your object is belong to another object, like you have a parent, such that you have an obj, and this obj have a key of A and B, and if obj has a parent here, parent obj with a key of E, then your for in, you iterate through all the A, B, and E. This is what we want to avoid, because we are only simply cloning the object here, but we are not going to clone it the parent objects or anything above the object itself by tracing all the way along the prototype chain. So we are going to ignore everything along the prototype chains, but only want to clone the properties of the object itself. So we can add an additional lines here. So if object has own property, then we are going to clone these properties. If otherwise, we will just ignore it. So how are we going to prove it? Let's say I have an object called parent object, which has a property of E equal to 10. And we just want to console log all the keys here. By right, you should able to see the key of A, B, C, and E. But we are only cloning A, B, and C by ignoring E. So here is the result. See? Oh, sorry, I made a mistake. So we want to attach the parent objects to the objects by using object.set prototype of obj and parent object. Yeah. By doing so, we attach a prototype to the objects, which is reflected in the graph here. So that's a parent object. So this key should be able to print out like A, B, C, and E. See? But by adding the expression here in line 11, we ignore the E, which is not the key of this object, but instead is the key of the prototype of the objects. Yeah, so this is the end of the shadow clone. Yeah.